31 books in to the 100 book challenge. We're creeping our way through this. In this video today, and yes, you do see Internet Speculative Fiction Database on the screen behind me, we are going to be looking at the good, the bad, the fantastic planet. Ooh. A little bit of an awkward setup here behind the scenes, so we're going to maybe struggle a little bit, but let's take a look here at, as promised, The Fantastic Planet, A World of Magic and Mystery by Stephen Caldwell, part of the Galactic Encounters series. This was published in 1980 from Crescent Books in the U.S. edition anyway. It is all of 64 pages long, so it's not long. Stephen Caldwell is actually Stuart Cowley. He decided with this series to use this name. I don't know exactly why, for the Galactic Encounter series, as opposed to the Terran Trade Authority books that I first discovered him in. Okay, I'm just kind of cutting in here so that we can take a look at the rest of this series just because, right? I don't know how old I was when I first got these books. It was a very ridiculously long time ago. Would have been basically right when they came out. So I'm looking to see when that was. These are the Terran Trade Authority books, which you just need to have. Like, how do you not have these, right? You got to go find these. They can be a little on the pricey side if you want them in good condition. 1978, that sounds about right. Spacecraft 2000 to 2100 AD. You won't recognize any of these from 2000 up to 2025, but fantastic. Much, large format books. I mean, it's all like Chris Voss, Angus McKee, all those guys. Dynamite. The next one was Great Space Battles. Who doesn't love a great space battle? I'm going to choose one space battle. Well, there's no battling going on, but there you go. And then after that was the Galactic Encounter series that we're talking about today. And the first one of that series was Aliens in Space, which I have read. These are smaller. You'll see the smaller format than the TTA books. Same concept, though, right? Brian Stableford kind of stuff there, right? Isn't that Brian Stableford? Not the artist, but the author of the books that comes from. Great Monsters and stuff like that. Yeah. And then I have also read Star Quest. Right. And I have a copy of Worlds at War that does not have a dust jacket, but it has the printed boards, which kind of leads me to believe that it kind of came that way on purpose. I believe I have one more still to collect. Is that correct? Settlers in Space. What do I have? Oh, no, right. I need Settlers in Space and Space Patrol are the only two that I still need. So I got to find those after I'm done with the 100 book challenge. So let's just dive in here. Cover art by Robin Hidden, who, as far as I can tell, is a French artist. We will see his work again, mostly on French books that, well, spoiler alert, that apparently have never had U.S. editions. So we'll take a look at those. The book itself is a handsome little thing. Nice kind of paint embossed boards there. Very nice green end papers. I love Stephen Caldwell's author bio here is entirely fictional, right? Stephen Caldwell joined the Galactic Federation Security Force in 2393 and yada, yada, yada. Being a man of mystery, as he is, right? Again, Crescent Books in New York. So I said we're going to talk about this book in terms of the good, the bad, and the Fantastic Planet. Here's one of the bad right away. Interior text in a book should never be in a sans serif font. Period. This is clearly, and I see this in art books all the time. Not all the time, but too often, that are really sort of put together primarily by designers and not necessarily by editors. And so they're using sort of the typefaces that they've come to know and love, which tend to almost exclusively be decorative fonts. So, hey, indie authors out there, when you are typesetting your book, remember Kindle's going to do what Kindle does. I'm talking about when you are actually typesetting this in one way or another for a printed book, then absolutely do not use this typeface. I know maybe you like it, maybe you're used to it, maybe you work in the tech industry or whatever. That's what websites and other, web pages, whatever, are set, tend to be set in that kind of thing. Just no, man, right? It makes this hard to read. The decision of these three skinny columns was also not good. This is a very difficult to read book, especially one that seems to be, well, maybe, right, that, kind of aimed at kids, but then not really, which we'll see in some of the artwork that I might have to put my finger over for the sake of the YouTube censors or whatever. So I did some research before I got filming here. So it absolutely, first of all, very special thank you to all the good folks at Internet Speculative Fiction Database. If you do not know this website, you have to have this bookmarked. This is where everybody gets their information about editions of books, authors, cover artists. Not always, right? A lot of times those names are missing, but this is how you know, do you really have a first edition? Oh, I've got this old paperback. I think it seems to be the first edition. It's got a cover price of 95 cents. You can go here and see, is that true? Is that a first edition? And then you might see, oh no, there was one like from 2 years before that was 75 cents or something like that. But this is where you get that information. Obviously, nobody is perfect, but the wealth of absolutely great information about the history of fantasy and science fiction book publishing, horror, etc., whatever bleed over that any artist might have, it's here. It's fantastic. You need to go there and know this thing, right? Anyway, this book is primarily about the art, the Fantastic Planet. And like the previous books in this series, as well as the Terran Trade Authority books, these were all art. This is all art from other books. This is fantasy in this case and science fiction book cover art that was mostly published, it looks like, around the mid to later 70s, which would make sense. So these were more or less current for a book that was then published in, put together and published in 1980. Then what happens is that our man Stephen Caldwell, or Stuart Cowley, whatever his name is, writes some fiction to put these all together. In the original sort of spaceship guides, he would just sort of describe the ship and then talk about that within this loose framework of the Terran Trade Authority universe. Here he's in the Galactic Encounter series, he's telling a story. He believes that he is. This is where we get to the bad out of the good. And you know that I don't like to criticize books. That's not what I'm here for. I love this book. I love the previous two that I read. I'm going to collect and read all the rest of them. But this is really, the story itself is a masterclass in what not to do. Not just the sans serif font packed into these weird skinny columns, but the story itself names some characters and tells you exactly what they're doing. Well, not exactly. In general, tells you sort of what's happening. This crew of this spaceship runs across this kind of anomaly in space, and there seems to be an invisible planet. Something is cloaking this planet. And they go to land there, and they end up kind of crashing, and they meet the native population, which seem to be kind of more technologically primitive, which is where, and then there's like a sort of, I don't know, a sort of Wizard of Oz kind of character that they're all afraid of, and this starship crew ends up getting involved with the sort of downtrodden indigenous people, and they help them fight this sort of war of independence. It's a great idea. It's all fun, yeah, but it's presented in such a dry and so we talk about show don't tell, and that's one of those things where there's weird pushback now because too many people are saying the same thing. This book will absolutely tell you the importance of show. It will show you why it's not good to just tell. Because this reads, and yes, it's really short, but I've read short stories that are among the greatest works of fiction I've ever come across in my life. Yeah. And I'm sure you have too. So it doesn't matter how short it is. It doesn't mean that you have to just click through plot point. Then they did this, then they did that, then they did the other thing, then they saw the thing that's vaguely kind of references the artwork. So if you want to find a copy of this book, do it like I think everybody else does, for the amazing artwork in their full page or even 2-page spread configurations. The story is an absolute masterclass in how not to write a short story, how not to write a novella, whatever you might end up calling this. It's not a lot of text, but it is painfully dry to read. So that having been said, that's your writing advice portion of the video. Now I'm just sitting on the same page here, so let's get into it. This first one is by the great Angus McKee, really one of my favorite sci-fi artists of all time. This originally showed up on the Isaac Asimov book, The Planet That Wasn't. And, oops, I bumped the thing. I told you it was going to be a little, the tripod. I told you it was going to be a little bit shaky, so let's bear with me. This is cool. This is where you see, this is in the story, the ship is landing, and clearly there's a technological disparity there, right? This is kind of a fun one. This was from the cover of the Vicinity Cluster by Piers Anthony. The art was by Fred Gambino. Really terrific. One of the things you might notice as I go through this and I'm showing you the covers off to the side there, it seems like the printing on this one was a little bit more dull. The colors here are a little bit muted, which is kind of a little bit disappointing, I think. I don't know. But at the same time, as I was looking through this, before I, looked at any of the, should I have had my hand over this? The lady. I think it's creepier to do what I'm doing right now than to just have the boobies. Peter Elson, who is fantastic. This is from a Robert Silverberg book called Up the Line. We'll move along. This cover art was from The Man Who Ate the World by Frederick Pohl. Pohl, one of my favorite authors of all time. The artist is Colin Hay. This is another one where on the cover it feels like there's a really different tonality, but this one I like. It's, just this great, snowy. It just feels cold. Like, where are we? We're on some kind of ice planet. This, not really a city. Is this some kind of big, I think it's some kind of big laboratory structure. In the story, it makes no sense at all, because you see that they're moving from, and in the previous picture, everybody's walking around wearing like loincloths, and it's clearly pretty, uh, you know, warm outside to, well, now we're in an Alaskan winter. And I'm going to bump the tripod. I'm trying really hard not to. It's a big inconvenience. We're just going to keep going. This one I love. I always love sci-fi cityscapes. I'm a fan for that. Does it sound like I'm listening when I say cityscapes? Anyway, Peter Elson, again, right? You're going to see these names repeated, right? There's a fairly small group of artists that he seemed to like, or that he seemed to like for this book in any case. This was originally on The Fall of the Towers by Samuel R. Delany. I say Delaney? Is it Delany? Do we know? And you'll see here, right, that mixture of science fiction and fantasy. This really feels like it certainly came from a fantasy novel, yes, but for this one, by the artist who goes by Melvin, he signs it Melvin, right? His name was actually Melvin Grant. There's no source for this one. I could not find a source for it. Oh, I'm really trying not to bump that, and I apologize. I'm going to keep working harder not to do that. Another Melvin piece. This one's cool. This is really fun. Love the. I'm a sucker for monsters, right? The degree, and again, the degree to which it matches up with the story is, I don't know. Caldwell just seems to be. Oh, I hate saying this out loud. He seems to be phoning it in. Also, there's captions to all of the artwork, every single one of which is a spoiler for what happens like in the next page or so. That's irritating when you're actually reading it, believe me. Here's the first of the 2-page spreads, though. This is really cool. This is Joe Petagno. I think I'm pronouncing his name right, as the artist. From the novel Ashes and Stars by George Zabrowski. This one, I think, was a piece of art that, and you can see it's kind of smaller on the book, right? That I don't know that it really transferred to the big. It seems blurry. Is it just me? I don't have my reading glasses on. There's Peter Elson again. This one, I love this. This is from the cover of Necromancer by Gordon R. Dickson. Again, does it have like a lot to do with the story, or... And, are we just putting air quotes around story for this whole thing? Again, it's the art that we're looking at. This is Nick Fox. He signs it just Fox. Where did this come from? This is Winter Wing by David Jarrett. Right? Yes. Pretty cool. Right, there's your D&D character, right there. I love this action scene. Colin Hay is the artist. This is The Company of Glory by Edgar Pangborn. Edgar Pangborn, one of those kind of more obscure authors, a favorite of mine. I have not read this book, and I should. One thing that would be fun, right, as somebody who collects these books, would be then to collect all of the editions that have this cover art. That would be neat, right? But I can't because I'm still in my 100-book challenge. Maybe I'll do that after that's over. Here is the first of... We saw Robin hidden on the cover of these books that, in illustrations that did not show their face in America until apparently this book. This is from Jacques de Pallard. I am murdering that French, and I'm sorry, by P.J. Herault, or Herault. Apparently, there is no English edition of this book. There should be, right? This looks like very groovy sword and sorcery stuff, which I'm always a fan of. And there he is again, Robin hidden once more. Planete de Agnes by Gabriel Jan. Also, apparently, no English edition. but definitely, sort of calling up in his own style that sort of Frazetta Boris. This is really sort of the Frazetta pose, right? Um, which, obviously shows its age in terms of, I don't know. But remember, yeah, she's improperly dressed for the weather and kneeling in the snow there, but so is he. I'm just throwing that out there. This one's kind of fun. Great action pose here, also by Robin Hidden from Reve on Synthese. Me no speak the French, in case you were wondering. I know I fooled you there for a second. Also by Gabriel Jan. Is this an author we should be translating? Where are these books? What's going on? Why are we denied the Gabriel Jan? This is another one where, okay, so the good, the bad, the ugly, or whatever, the good, the bad, the fantastic. Not all of these paintings, we'll be honest with each other, really hit the mark. This one, which appeared on the book The Serpent by Jane Gaskell, is definitely one of those. She's less, this lady here, a little bit less tolerant of the bikini in winter kind of setup, and clearly is just kind of not having it. He seems grumpy too because he's also not wearing a shirt. Apparently in these fantasy worlds you can have snow, but humans are I don't know. Maybe there's some sort of heater on their giant ostrich guy. I mean, there's something about this that's just sort of I know what you're going for. Anyway, this was a cover of a John Wyndham book, and in some cases also you can see how the art is reversed. So I don't know for sure that this isn't the way that Colin Hay, who's the artist, wanted these planes to be going, or if they are going in the other direction, we don't know. Certainly for a book cover, you want all of this, because this would be the front cover of the book, this would be the back cover of the book. You could see why that was flipped over. Yeah. Why it's not in that configuration in this book? Maybe it is because that's the painting, but then surely Colin Hay, who was responsible for lots of great sci-fi book cover art, would have known, have the planes flying the other direction. We're back to Melvin now already, and this was from something I believe called The Shattered Chain, but I'm not finding really a source for that, or am I? If I find one, you'll see it here. Oh, this is so... And then the spread by the artist Harry Oakes. No source for this one either, but it's clearly a book cover, because here you can see this would be the front cover, this would be the back cover, and your character and all the action is in the front, and then it's, groovy kind of sci-fi fantasy landscape in the back. I like this one, right? This is great. I think this is our first Fritz Lieber book. Peter Elson, again, the artist. This is from Swords and Ice Magic. I say Fritz Lieber, and I always have, but, in German, wouldn't it be... It would be Leiber. So it's probably Leiber, Fritz Lieber, Leiber. As far as I'm concerned, you can pronounce it however you want. He's a favorite of, the old school sword and sorcery authors, for sure, right? Here's a book that I would just love to have in any case. Melvin is back. This one, right? I'm a sucker for monsters. Of course I'm a sucker for monsters. This is from The Fallible Fiend by L. Sprague de Camp. Let's just hang with this guy for a second. Fantastic. This Melvin character, Melvin Grant, is all over this book, and here's another one. Unfortunate. Oh, he has slain his enemy there. There's no source for this one either. I don't know where this came from. Maybe Melvin's just, doing his own thing. which is absolutely awesome to do. Oh, this one's also fun. And we're back to Melvin, right? A Private Cosmos, another favorite author of mine, Philip Jose Farmer. Really a lot going on. Very Jack Kirby kind of pose here, and I keep hitting the tripod, and I'm sorry. Who doesn't love a just like wildly raging centaur? It's all good. This is from The Broken Lands by Fred Saberhagen. What's going on here, right? Your D&D character on top of some kind of high-tech tank. There's a lot of story in there. In the story written in this book, it kind of is like, okay. There she is, right? Clearly referenced from that Raquel Welch movie, right? Where she's like a cave woman and there's dinosaurs and stuff. That was like a 1 million BC or something like that. This is The Dragon by Jane Gaskell, right? Dave Pether is the artist. I hope I'm got his name right. What's not to love? Okay, I mean, why not, right? Yes, there is a disparity in the amount of clothes being worn, but this is fantasy art, isn't it? Isn't it? Savage Heroes, edited by Eric Pendragon, whose real name was Michelle Perry. But why not Eric Pendragon? I could be Eric Pendragon. The art by Les Edwards. Just real. This one to me just says late first edition D&D. Yeah. Purely. Love this guy. Want the stats for him. If this isn't Conan, like directly referenced from Frazetta, then I don't know what Les Edwards is doing here. But with the very Barsoomian Edgar Rice Burroughs, John Carter airship in the back. But how is that not Conan? This has no source, but he's definitely a Conan-looking guy. Am I wrong? I'm not wrong. You can't convince me that I'm wrong. Artist Peter Elson, book Swords Against Death. There's Fritz Leiber again. I said Leiber this time because I said Lieber last time. Again, monsters, good. Here's something that is always going to be an issue in any sort of art book, which is the art that goes across the gutter, which is here, right, where the pages meet. And you're going to lose that, you know? Like it kind of, things get misshapen. It's never obviously going to be perfect. It's just something that we all have to just find a way to be okay with, yeah? This piece, first of all, tells you exactly what happened to John Oates. You know, Daryl Hall went on to continue to do solo work and stuff like that. Oates was apparently transported to a world of monsters and magic. That's my story, and I'm sticking with it. The artist here is Nick Fox, and I think somewhere you'll see there's others of his in here where it just says Fox. It's just signed Fox. Apparently his real name was Nick Bantock. This is from Sign of the Unicorn by Roger Zelazny. So think about, I mean, the author names that I've thrown out here. These are some of the great science fiction and fantasy authors of the time, yeah. So there you go. Zelazny meets Oates. Is that the new band? Zelazny and Oates. Nick Fox again, this one with no source also. And so just not connected really in any way to the story, which at this point it feels like he just sort of gave up on that. The nightmare ends, so it's on page 60 of 64, so it has to end, and so it just does. absolute lesson in what not to do. Love this Peter Elson piece here, which harkens back to the shape of their spaceship. By the way, has changed completely because he's just he's just sourcing these paintings from other stuff. But we're back to what looked like that certainly calls back to the landscape and the people that they had first encountered. But love this big spherical ship. There's no source for this one. Or no, there is. This was in a magazine, Science Fiction Monthly, November of 1975, but it's not the cover? I don't know. Question mark. But anyway, Peter Elson nails it yet again, and that's the end almost, right? The last page. Here, I'm trying to work around and hoping that the glare isn't too bad. Here's where the end papers were glued a little bit too, just by a little bit, I mean way too deep into that page. But the last is, we end with Peter Elson again. This is from Fool's Hill by Richard Lupoff. And that's it, right? Then we're at the end. So I have and have already read Aliens in Space and Star Quest. I remember the stories being better in these two. Not great, but better. And anyway, what I don't have, I will collect, and I will read them. And I will, just like I did today, the same art on the back as on the front, I will revel in just some great, not so great, somewhere in between science fiction and fantasy illustration. This has been The Fantastic Planet. The 100-book challenge continues. Here you will see the algorithmically chosen video and the free at all times to subscribe. So do that. Thumbs up and yada, 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 all that stuff. I still have 2 more books that I have finished reading that still need videos, and I also have crushing deadlines. So that has been Phil. That has been Fantasy Author's Handbook and The Fantastic Planet by Stephen Caldwell. See you soon.